And recording. Cool. Well, it is an honor to welcome my next guest to the Lax Goalie Rap podcast, Syracuse goalie, Team Iroquois goalie, Warren Hill. Welcome to the show. Warren, how are you?
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm doing good. Thanks.
Yeah, that's what I like to hear. I always like to ask goalies, going back to the very beginning, do you remember the very first time that you jumped into goal? That story?
Yeah, so up here in Canada, a lot of us, our first love is box lacrosse, right? So I grew up as a player. Um, Probably started playing when I was 3, and when I turned 7, our team didn't have a goalie. So I thought it was cool. I liked all the cool, like same thing with hockey goalies, like their cool pads and stuff. So I hopped in, and eventually just fell in love with it. And a few years later down the road, introduced to field lacrosse. Again, being up here, the box goalies were expected to hop in cage and play the field lacrosse position. So that was a no brainer. And um, yeah, that's when I started.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've had a few Canadian goalies on, including Dylan Ward, and a lot of them, have that kind of like I'm a field goalie, I'm a box goalie, and they kind of take that, that
Yeah.
mentality to the field game. So is that kind of, when we think about your style of goalie play in the field game, did you bring a lot of those box elements of like, I'm going to come out and kind of cut down the angle and make this as hard of a shot for the shooters as I can? Or what was your style of play as a field goalie?
It's definitely progressed. So kind of funny story about that. So yeah, I would consider like learning the angles and stepping and attacking the ball just like we would do in box lacrosse. But coming back to like the funny story, so my uncle was our first coach, and he told me like I didn't know anything about the field lacrosse game, so he just said come with a belly pad, helmet, gloves, and a stick, and by that I was wearing like one of my mom's teammates catching like softball catchers chest pad. Anyways, long story short, warms me up, get peppered, hate getting hit with the ball because I didn't know how to use my stick. I didn't have the greatest stick skill, so all I knew, just like in box cross, use your shoulders, your legs, hop in there, and got sick of doing that. So had to learn quick to use my stick and catch the ball. Use that.
Yeah, right. Or else you just keep getting bruised. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so interested in kind of you grew up on Onondaga, part of the Six Nations. I'm just so interested in that culture. And in fact, I didn't even realize, here's my naivety, I didn't realize it extends up into Canada. I mean, I knew it was in like northern upstate New York, but it actually goes into Canada as well. Is that right?
Yep. So I actually grew up on the. I'm grew up here in Six Nations. It's another Iroquois territory, and like you mentioned, like the different Iroquois territories cover the provinces of Ontario, Quebec, and New York State, and there's I believe one that borders, if not is in Pennsylvania, and honestly, there's like a couple more. I know there's one in Wisconsin and stuff like that. But yeah, we're all pretty connected, and a
Hmm.
lot of our, excuse me, like culture, beliefs, and stuff is all very similar. We're all, though we might have different tribal names in the sense like I'm Mohawk. Marty Ward, who mentioned he was Cherokee, has that Onondaga relation. The more you go up north, again, there's Mohawks. Western New York, like the Buffalo area, there's Senecas and then Tuscaroras. But we all are the same people, and a lot of our culture tradition is really similar.
That's interesting. When it comes to the sport of lacrosse, is there differences between Mohawks and Cherokees just in terms of how they think about the sport, or is, that sport pretty much the same all around?
I think the sport is very similar all around. I believe how the game was given to us is very similar. I know down south in Choctaw they actually play with the two mini sticks. I've never seen the game personally, but I've seen pictures and kind of seen stories of it. So that's kind of the only differences. And around here in the different Iroquois communities, it's one and the same, and we all have a similar creation story of how the game came about.
What is that story? Would you mind telling it?
So the one that's kind of the constant that I've heard was um I'm just trying to think. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no
Just
worries. Take your time.
yeah. So I know there was a game, like one of the first games back in the like way back before humans, and it was just the land animals and sky animals and water animals, fish and stuff that inhabited this earth. And the land animals, they call them like the four-legged, so like your bear, your wolf, your deer, wanted to have a competition with the winged animals, hawks, eagles, guys like that. And they decided to have a game of lacrosse. And the story that I'm told was there was, I believe, I want to say it was a bat. It's either, again, it kind of changed. It's either a bat or a flying squirrel. But come to that, it was this bat went to the four-legged team like an animal because he had fur, and he asked if he could play with their team. And they said no, you got wings and you're too small, you can't play with us. So he went and asked the bird teams, and at first the winged creatures weren't going to let him play, and they decided he could. So they had this game. It went on all day, and it was going into the night. And so the story goes kind of like that's where this animal thrived, was in the nighttime, the bat, right?
Mm.
Sonar and stuff. But also too, he was the difference maker. He could swoop down and grab the ball, things like that. But that's I'm probably butchering the story, but that's
No.
kind of somewhat the story I was being told. I know Cody Jameson, he tells it on social media or on YouTube somewhere, and it's a beautiful story. And again, I apologize if I'm butchering it. It's just something I'm trying to remember.
Yeah. I just watched the doc, well, not just, maybe like a couple days ago, the Spirit of the Game documentary, and they touch on that
Yeah,
story. They touch on that story a little bit in that document. It's a great documentary for anyone listening to this. Go check it out. And
oh
they touch
yeah,
on that story. And what I love about it so much is that it's like every animal has their strength, right? You know, the bear's
yeah,
big and strong, but he's slow. And you know, like the eagle, you know, is super fast and he can get in there. The deer is wise. He's like the team leader. So it's kind of interesting because
yeah,
it really is how I think lacrosse is. Like you don't have to be like American football. Like you pretty much have to be like a huge human being to be successful in that sport. And that
yeah.
is not the case in lacrosse.
Yeah, and the same thing with basketball, right? And I think that again, yeah, that's also beautiful about our game is it doesn't really matter what size you are, how tall, how big, how fast, how slow. Everybody has some way of contributing to the team and a team success and just having fun ultimately. Like you said, you don't got to be the tallest or the fastest to play our sport.
Yeah, I love it. Do you identify as a particular animal or no?
Me,
Yeah.
um, not really. No, I guess if I had to pick one, it'd probably be a sloth. I'm just kidding. No, 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 not really. No, I mean I'm Wolf Clan, and I know like we run in a pack and stuff, so I consider myself to be very family oriented, and that's outside lacrosse. But other than that, no, I don't really have an animal that I associate with.
Got it. Because in that documentary, they talk about, you know, I forget who's who, but like, you know, Lyle Thompson's you know, is the deer, and so is. So they go through these
Yeah,
animals. But I was just curious.
yeah.
I love it, love it. So kind of going back to your lacrosse goalie story and your progression. I mean, who did you learn from? You know, who kind of showed you how to do it? So you're 7 years old, you get in there, you kind of make the switch from box goalie with all the pads to field goalie. Who kind of showed you the ropes, or who were some of the goalies you learned from?
So truthfully, I never really had a goalie coach, or anyone like that. Like obviously, you have parents and coaches that understand the basics, like the stance and just how to approach a shooter how to approach a shooter per se. But like kind of moving forward for that, I learned from box especially was just going to the rink and watching our local junior A or senior A lacrosse teams and just seeing what the goalies do in those games. And that even transitioned to field lacrosse. Again, I didn't have a goalie coach. My uncle Cam Bomberry was played at Nazareth, and he came back to coach us at that young age, at our young age. And he didn't know much about the position, but he knew a bit of the stance, and just watching his like teammates, his goalies play, and knew enough like how they prepared in a sense how to give a good warm up. Or
Mm-hmm.
I remember, I think one of the things he taught me was since the net was so big, obviously it was like an ocean to me. So learning the position again back when there was just all grass fields, taking my cleat and stomping those like three posts on the top of the crease, so I'd always have a visual of where I would need to be in the cage. And I believe that was something he picked up from one of his goalies at Nazareth, but that's like the earliest kind of tool I can remember. But as I got a little older, got fortunate enough where I don't know how, but our local satellite provider was able to get some college games. And I remember every Saturday tuning into, I believe it was called College Sports Network back in the day, and it always had the college games on. So watching that, I grew up as a big fan of Doc Snyder, I believe Joey Kemp, uh, Danny Loftus, um, Jesse Sportsman, guys like that in that heyday, Alex Hewitt. And I believe that's like when Matt Russell too, those guys like that is who I seen on TV. And again, like we didn't have internet. So the way I also learned was getting lacrosse, Inside Lacrosse magazine at our local sports store, lacrosse store, happened to have copies of that. So I would just read things, whether that be tips from the coaches, putting in feedback in those magazines, or watching it on TV. It was a lot of trial and error and learning on my own, really.
Yeah, interesting. Similar story for me. I think we're about the same age. Maybe you're a little bit younger than me, but I graduated college in '03, and maybe you're a lot younger than me. I don't know, but so I'm like learning this position, and I don't have a goalie coach, right? And you go out there, and I did have internet, fortunately, but you search, and there was nothing. There was nothing, and I end up finding like
Yeah,
one book from John Weston, the goalie man, and just read that book like cover to cover over and over. So kids these days got it good, is what I'm trying to say.
oh yeah, for sure. And like you said, so like now, like we were just talking about before this interview, that highlights from all the games are posted on YouTube, and that's awesome. I like watching them. But I remember we had a tournament in Syracuse, I believe, and that's whenever we traveled to the States for a tournament, that's where I would collect DVDs of games or highlights. And I remember there was this one called like Best of College Lacrosse 06, 07. Again, no internet or YouTube or anything like that, but religiously watching these highlights and stuff of these college games on what these goalies are doing and what they're excelling at and learning that way.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. If you had to sum up, your favorite part about being a lacrosse goalie, what would you say, Warren?
To sum up my favorite part, I think it's just having that impact on the game. And we are the last line of defense, and I I loved it. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm not one to want to be running around out there or getting hit, but there's just something about make being that difference in a game, making that save, or executing a good clear, a good pass, things like that. Those small victories are something that I fell in love with at an early age.
Yeah, isn't that the best? I love it too. Well, cool. So then, you kind of learn the skills. You're playing field. I guess at what point in high school did you realize, like, well, I'm pretty good at this. Maybe I can, play at the next level.
I I was fortunate enough to so another thing here being up in Canada, the high school lacrosse is not as competitive as it is in the States. We have lacrosse teams at certain schools, but a lot of times it's just we join a team so we can get out of school on Fridays and we play these mini tournaments and stuff. We were excuse me, fortunate enough to win 4 provincial championships, but a lot of it came down to travel teams. And now and again, if we had a break in the summer box season, we may go to a Rochester, a Syracuse, or potentially a Maryland to go play in a tournament. And um, there was this thing called the Canada Top 100, I believe. It was a product of the Hill Academy and Brody Merrill. And I went the first year, and there were some kids that got invites, and um, college coaches were coming up. It was a big deal in our neck of the woods here in Canada. So going there and being able to compete with Canada's best was a pretty good confidence booster. And the following year, I attended again, and is where I was introduced to and noticed by Brody and actually Merrick Thompson, who was coaching at Albany, who was my Hill Academy coach, to do a post grad year, and I was invited to go join the Hill Academy, and that's where it kind of clicked, and I actually did a lot of learning and a lot of growing up at that school.
Interesting. Interesting. And so, and if I'm looking at like the timeline of your career, like in 2014, you're playing international. You're playing for Team Iroquois, and then after that, you actually play for Syracuse. Is that right?
Yep,
Nice.
I played for
Um,
them for 2 seasons.
nice. So I guess leading into Team Iroquois, how was that? I mean, what was that experience like? Playing with some of the greatest in the world.
It's honestly, it's the best, and I imagine for any person, like we're fortunate enough to play for our people, but anyone that's has the opportunity to play for their home country, that sense of pride and honor it is to do that. It's really special and something I definitely took a lot of pride in, and um, hope to be able to do it again. It's a lot of fun. The games mean just a little bit more, but all I can say with one word is just pride. It's awesome.
A lot of pride, yeah. Is there something about the way that the Iroquois played the game that you don't feel like people in the States really just kind of really don't understand?
I think um, it's to us like it's said time and time again, but it's true. It's more than a game to us. So um, yes, we compete at this international level, and we um, train, we practice, and we do everything everybody else does. But to us, it's ingrained in our history. It's ingrained in our culture. This game, and that's what makes it so much more important to us to um, play the game the right way, um, to have fun, to not play with a negative mind, to play positively, to have honor in your opponents and things of that nature. Also, too, if it if I can say this, like if it's a little rough, like that's because we're told at a young age, and again through our histories, to play it at the highest level, at um, to the fullest, really, like to give it everything we got. And unfortunately, that might seem rough, but no way are we out there to hurt anybody or um, like be ill will towards our opponents, like talking like that way. But at the same time, like offensively, that's where those beautiful plays come in. Like it's not all X's and O's. It's that flow of the game on the offensive side of the ball. We do have like set plays and stuff, defensive schemes, but a lot of it is flow and creativity.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. I do. After watching that documentary, I definitely understand what you're saying about it being more than a game. I mean, I like lacrosse is my passion as well, but I didn't start playing at 3, for example, and just have it be so ingrained in your culture. So that's really interesting. Really interesting. What was the recruiting process like for you going to Syracuse?
Um, it was definitely it's obviously new for everybody because everyone's going through it for the first time. But no, it was different. when I was at the Hill Academy, I had some looks, and I actually committed to Marquette University out of the Hill Academy. And unfortunately, my grades weren't there. I went and spent 2 seasons at Onondaga Community College, fell in love with the Syracuse area, and I, again, like I mentioned before, just being a big family person, my family kind of went through some struggles and I had some personal things come up. So it made it tough when Syracuse, when I had committed to Marquette, I had always had them. That was my like where I was gonna go. And then Syracuse came knocking and different things came up. And honestly, like I think I made a pretty good decision and Syracuse seemed to be the best fit. It was a hop, skip, and a jump from home. I was able to come home on weekends if I wanted to, being 3-4 hours away. My family was able to come and watch our games and come visit if they needed to. So that was another plus. And again, like it was far enough away where I could have that independence and be on my own and things of that nature. But yeah, it was definitely different. And I didn't know anything about the recruiting process. I had some pretty good guidance from guys like Bryce Queener and Patrick Merrill, Brody Merrill, and Merrick Thompson at the Hill Academy. Moving on to OCC, um, Chuck Wilbur, Nick Gatto, Chris Brim. These guys all kind of helped me navigate those waters. So um, it was definitely a big thank you to them.
What were some of the things that what was some of the advice that they gave you just in terms of, you should meet with this coach, or you should go here, or you should play in this camp, or like what was kind of some of the advice, if you recall?
On it, so when I was at the Hill Academy, they did some recruiting for us, um, and they were talking to coaches for us on our behalf, and they wanted us to teach. They really pushed and teach us the right way about going about the recruiting process. So I remember um, just having phone calls and not ignoring any calls from coaches and like cleaning up your social media and things of that nature and sticking to the classroom. And that's again going to the Hill Academy is where I learned to grow up not only on the field, the weight room, and the classroom. So really pushed academics and helped us with any questions or advice that we may have needed at there when it came to the recruiting process. So um, also, like I think the biggest thing at the Hill was weighing our options, right? So like this school that contact you maybe your dream school or it's a how do I say it? Like, yeah, it might be a dream school, good lacrosse program, but here are these other guys out. Whether that be maybe they help you out financially better, or maybe this school offers the program you actually want to take that you're gonna see a career in. Like just weighing all those options. Like when you go off to college, it's not just about the lacrosse, and eventually you're gonna have to enter the real world. So that's something they really pushed.
Great advice. Great
Yeah.
advice. Yeah, yeah, it's so true. I have a couple one guy, he went to a school just because of the lacrosse program, and that was it. Didn't really care for much of the school or the location, and then he got hurt, and then like lacrosse was gone. So then he's like, crap, I don't want to be here, and he ended up transferring. So yeah, I mean, just the whole picture. Can you be at that? Would you be happy at that school without lacrosse? Because are you getting a good education? Are they giving you some financial aid if you need it? Consider all of that as you're making your choice. Great advice.
And I think it comes back to like I think I was watching a documentary on Shaquille O'Neal, and he had a good quote like advice his parents gave to him. I believe it was something along the lines of, "Say if you, heaven forbid, you broke your foot and you had to sit out a year, would you be happy at that school sitting out if you don't got your particular sport to fill your time? Would you be happy going to these classes, living in this area? Like if sports was taken out of it, would you be happy there?" And I think that's definitely important to look at when you're deciding where you want to be.
Yeah, totally agree with that. So when you get to Syracuse, do they? I imagine they have a goalie coach, and I mean, were there some new things that you learned while you were there, or by that point had you been playing the game long enough where you kind of knew you knew what you were doing?
I mean, I think every guy likes to think they know enough when they step on campus, but definitely, um, it was definitely a new world. So coming from OCC and the Onondaga Community College or junior college ranks, we were fortunate enough where our teams were stacked and um, our practices were intense, and we got a lot of our best competition through those practices. So going to Syracuse, everybody where they're coming from was either a high school American or team captain. They were the best players on their high school teams, right? So just showing up on that first practice, you got Kevin Rice, Hakeem Lecky, um, guys like that firing on all cylinders. So that was definitely a huge eye opener in the sense like we got 10, 15 guys on the offensive side of the ball that can bury it, where I was used to coming from, I only had to worry about 2 or 3 guys. So that was different. The defensive schemes, not that we didn't have any at OCC. At the Hill Academy, they taught me a bit, but more of the X's and O's on the defensive side of the ball was something that took a long time because I like getting to realize that the position is more than just being the ball stopper. You're that quarterback back there and navigating your defense and um, being a leader on the defensive end of the ball and knowing when to bark orders and knowing when to like keep the guys loose and calm back there. So it was a lot to take in, and I when I first got there, Bobby Wardwell was our starter, and I just remember learning a lot from him. He was excellent in the cage, and again, just taking that step back and kind of taking everything in and learning as we go here.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. For the young guys, the young the young goalies listening to this, who want to learn what you just said, what you just learned, learning the defense and kind of learning the X and O's and learning how to be a communicator and also learning how to be a leader. Like how did you go? How do you go about learning that? What would you say to those young goalies who are interested in learning that piece of the game but just don't know where to start?
So I think again, we're fortunate enough now in this day and age with technology. There's a lot of information out there. So going to the like defensive communicating side of the ball, I imagine there's tons of information out there and things like that. And until you experience it, it's definitely different seeing it like as you're watching than you are actually in the moment. So actually kind of it took me a while to learn to speak up. Coming back to Hill Academy, Brody Merrill, I remember he was yelling at me for not yelling more at the defensive guys. So learning to speak up and use my voice and not yelling to like give them crap for a missed assignment or anything like that, but using my voice to communicate like top left, top right, and um, navigating the clearing game. And then going back to Syracuse, something that I learned from Kevin Donahue, who the offensive coordinator, he's taught me about that. I forget what the word is, but say like you can't be screaming at the top of your lungs on a defensive play the whole time because when you so again, sorry if I'm butchering this. I forget what the word is, but say you're screaming top left, top right at the top of your lungs, and then you want someone to slide, you like go or whatever. Oh, what is it?
It's like I think I know what you're saying. It's like the tonality of your voice
Yeah,
is what I say, and also the excitement, right? Because
yeah,
if everything that you say that's coming out of your mouth as a goalie is urgent, then
yeah.
nothing is. Like, how do you differentiate between that? So you're right. It's like when you communicate the ball position, which is a very like non-urgent thing, you have one tone, And then when it's time to send the slide, like you have a much more urgent tone. So I've called
Yeah,
it voice tone. I don't know if that's the
yeah,
right word.
that's what I was getting at, and I never realized that before or really thought about it until I got to Syracuse. And like just had that moment, like this makes a lot of sense because yeah, again, like I was one of those guys that was constantly just screaming everything, losing my voice, but there was no real meaning, sense of urgency behind it. So that was one thing. Um, and going back to learning the leadership stuff, just pick someone that you think is a good leader. Is all I can think about. So I was fortunate enough to have some pretty good captains growing up from different teams, and even watching things like interviews or hearing how guys talk about their leaders on hockey teams, football teams, basketball teams, like those kind of characteristics um, are things that you can learn on how to be a good leader, if that makes sense.
That makes total sense to me. And I don't think anyone said that on this podcast. So that's really interesting. It's like if you want to learn to be a leader, then pick some role models who are leaders and kind of follow in their steps. And even like taking it a step further, it doesn't have to be people that you know.
Yeah,
Right. I
yeah,
mean, it could be people that you watch via documentaries and study and read books about and watch videos about. It could be like the late great Kobe Bryant, like could be
yeah,
who you learn leadership from. That's a really interesting idea. I love it.
yeah, kind of like that thing too. Like say a Tom Brady, like obviously there's a bunch of information on him going out there, but the kind of constant is like he knows when to turn it on, and he's communicates with his team. He doesn't seem to be down ever. Like if you're watching a football game and he's playing, you don't see his body language like we're getting beat 40-0 or whatever, and he's giving up or um screaming at his teammates, why didn't you catch that? Like just things of that. Those kind of examples are something you can take into your own kind of leadership. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And even what I was thinking about is like to take it even one step further and know that like people are watching you,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's a huge thing for me, for a lot of people, but especially for me is like being a role model for the youth, right? And like, if someone who's a role model, would they do this certain thing? Would they act in a certain way, right? Would they, I don't know, like show up late to practice, go, be
Yeah, I
irresponsible?
get.
No, right?
Yeah, exactly. And again, it doesn't have to be just about sports, like how you carry yourself off the field. Are you a good person? Are you helping out others in your community, on your team? Um are you doing things the right way ultimately? And again, being a leader is you can't put on this face that I am this rah guy, or what I'm trying to get at is that you can't, like, a good leader is someone that's going to put in the same work as someone else. Like you wouldn't expect a teammate to do, I don't know, go and run 6 miles, but if you're not willing to do that, is what I'm trying
Hmm.
to get at.
Yeah, I totally get it. And it's like, and you also just can't get on the lacrosse field and be like, okay, I'm a leader now. Cause now we're on the field. Whereas like, I just saw you in the dorm, like, steal something. Right. Or,
Yeah,
like commit theft. Right. So you
yeah,
gotta live your life completely congruent to this leadership way, I think is what you're getting at, which is, I love it. I love it.
yeah,
Awesome. Kevin Donahue coached the goalies, right? I think I've seen some videos of him on YouTube doing some instruction. Am I right? Am I got the right
yeah,
person? Yeah.
yeah. So that was our goalie coach, and he was awesome. He taught a few things. Loves the ladder drill, and so that was always fun. We always hit the ladder, but again, going back to like the outlet scheme. So I got there when I was a junior. So for me and him had a talk, and it didn't make sense to kind of reinvent the wheel when I got there. But he added some pointers to my game, so I might have going in there for fall ball that first time. I was playing with my hands really wide, so he noticed that I had a hard time going to my offside hip on save, so bringing those in closer. Um, Again, like even maybe if there was a backdoor kind of goals, like the attackman passing backdoor and just missing it a little bit, he taught me how to kind of a way to like step into the net, so your body takes up the cage and you might be over the goal line, but if you save it, the ref's not going to give it to the other team. Like just little tactics like that, right? So
Yeah.
little things, and again, coming back to the defensive schemes or clearing game, and what we talked about, that voice and when to use it, the urgency of it, just
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah. You mentioned the agility ladder as a drill. Are there other lacrosse goalie drills or just other drills that you really that you guys used to improve that you really like?
Uh Honestly, the skipping rope, like it's a lot of basic things. So hitting the wall. Um, I know I'm actually falling in love with the skipping rope again. Like again, since we're in lockdown, nothing's really opened, and when it was cold, it was difficult to run. So I fell in love with the skipping rope again. Wall ball. We would kind of just play these hand-eye coordination games with lacrosse balls. Nothing too crazy, just keeping it simple. A lot of it can be incorporated into your warm-up, and something that I kind of like that I seen just to again incorporate into warm up before practice, before games, was just going back to the basics and of footwork drills, like setting those cones up in the line and practicing your steps and things like that. And I always thought that was good, just to bring it back and not have anything too complicated.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. Did we talk about some of the goalies that you learned from?
Um, Actually, Marty Ward's probably a big one. So um, I I was fortunate enough, like I heard the pod last week and he had some great things to say, and he's Marty's the man. Like everything that you heard on that show was him. So I got to know him as a coach. Actually, no, we'll go back further. So in 2007, I believe, in London, he was the starter for Team Iroquois. My uncles, my cousins were playing for that game, or for that Iroquois national team. London, Ontario's a 45-minute drive from Six Nations Reserve here. So we went and watched every game. And I remember, again, like he was one of the first guys that I seen, that I looked up to. Like this is before, again, that I had the college TV and stuff. So him and my cousin Roger were teammates at Limestone. And so he introduced me to him, and kind of just being in awe. But no, like watching his approach to the game and the intensity he brought and how much fun it looked like he having. He's a competitive guy, but you can see that fun, and it was kind of like, I want to do that one of these days. And so
Yeah.
again, moving forward, he was our coach in Turku, Finland for the U19 championships. Again, he was like on the defensive ball, and just being in his ear and him giving advice and leading us to our success, winning a bronze medal in 2012, and kind of coming full circle and being teammates in 2014. It was it was just wild, and he was a huge supporter. And again, it was crazy because he like again learning from this guy and kind of watching him as the years go, and to be a teammate of his was a huge experience, and I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. What is it like for you with that relationship with Marty, where like I learned so much from this guy, and then in 2014, like you get the start, right? Like he's backing you up. What's that feeling like for you?
So at first it was, are you sure? But
Right.
technology, right?
That's right. So it cut off. I don't know how long you were talking for, but it cut off right when you said, "Are you sure?" Talking about Marty Ward and kind of you getting the
Okay.
start. Yeah.
So again, so like going back to it, like them asking your or them telling me you're starting, and me kind of having that "are you sure" moment in my head. But No, it was definitely a huge stage. So I think the games in 14 in Denver, Colorado were the biggest it had ever been. All that talent on the field, the production, the eyeballs we had on the sport. It was a pretty massive experience. So, but I think going back again to Marty Ward, the positive energy that he brought and how positive and encouraging it was to me was really helpful towards my confidence in that tournament.
Nice. I love it. Who are some other important guys on that team?
On that team, Sid Smith was our leader. He, again, Syracuse guys. He was our leader on the back end. We had Coach Bevel, who was awesome and always in good communication with our team and with myself. And then obviously we had the Thompson brothers down the other end creating magic. So it was a really fun experience.
Yeah, I love it. Well, congratulations. You guys got the bronze, right? If I'm not mistaken, in that
Yep.
year. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Cool.
No,
Is that something you got around the house, that bronze medal?
um, Not gonna lie, it's in storage right now. I'm in the middle of a move, but I do have it. And definitely, it's not going anywhere. Pretty proud of that.
I
I
love
think
it.
it was Iroquois first one too. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Um, what about, I was going to ask you, so, as lacrosse goalies, it's when you give up a goal, it's like this really sensitive moment. It's really tough. Like all eyes are on you. A lot of goalies, especially, the younger ones, they feel like, oh man, I'm letting the team down because I didn't make that save. You are that last line of defense. And with that comes this great responsibility. How do you think about that? Like, how do you think about getting back into the game and not letting a goal affect you?
It's definitely a complex thing to excuse me, to kind of teach, but it is that having short memory and excuse me again, it's something that I'm ever learning as myself, as probably all are as goalie. It sucks, right, to get scored on, but getting older now and just getting more experience and getting more reps, um, learning to have that short memory and just having fun. I think that's the biggest thing. So, like I can say truthfully too, like getting scored on, it stinks and it's hard not to think about it. But knowing that you have another opportunity, it's coming. You're gonna get that next shot. You're gonna have another opportunity to make the next save is something that you have to look forward to. So um, that's kind of the advice that I try to tell the younger guys. And the main thing is to have fun. So if a goal goes in, like, so what? Like, kind of having that attitude. Lacrosse is a game where you're gonna get scored on. There are gonna be goals. Are there going to be games where you get scored on more goals than you would like? Yeah, but it happens, and if it's not happening to you, it's probably happening to the other guy, right? So there's no hidden secret that you're gonna get these games here and there. It's just learning to have fun with it, move forward, continue to improve in that sense.
Yeah, I love it. That's awesome advice. It's awesome advice. Yeah, there's always going to be the next one. And it's like an opportunity. It's great. Like, if you gave up a goal, move on to the next one because it's going to be coming at you sometimes within 15, 20 seconds
Hmm.
of that previous goal. So it's awesome, awesome advice.
And I think too a big thing is like kind of just what I was kind of taught moving forward too was not letting anybody let you know, not showing anybody that it is bugging you. Again, like, is there going to be times where that goal that you let in really kind of gnaws at you? Should it have been one you had, or is it one that might be put your team more in a pickle? Obviously, those things happen, but not showing any kind of waiver in your body language or letting the other team know that they're under your skin. So you might be freaking out in your head, but outside you look cool and calm and collected, and that not only presents to the opposing team that it didn't phase you, it gives your team confidence. You're not back there slamming your stick around or yelling at your guys. Why didn't you have him? Right. So
Mhm.
that's another kind of big thing that I was taught and like to teach the other guys.
Yeah, I do too. And I also tell goalies to like work on it. It's really weird. Like, in practice, like work on your body language when you give up a goal. Like, can you, pick the ball out of the back of the net, kind of do so in a very confident way. And
Yeah,
I think kind of just gave me a great idea of putting together like some clips of goalies that have done that to show like what that really looks like. Cause some goalies like flip it up and it looks so cool, like so confident. You know what I mean? They grab the ball and they throw it to
yeah,
the ref and then they're like with their team. And that's
yeah.
the kind of body language leadership you want as a goalie.
Exactly. And then you can, like you said, you can add some flair to it, and you can show your energy, and energy is infectious. And another guy like you were talking about, Dylan Ward earlier, I laugh because I don't know if you've seen him play box across, but like when he gives up a goal, you don't know what he's thinking or how he's feeling. He's just chilling on the side of his net. He's just calm. And like I said, it could be a tight game, it could be a blowout. The way that he carries himself, you never know what's going through his head. And so even now today, going back to learning from other guys, like us as goalies are continuously learning, whether that be guys that came before us that are present or younger than us right now. So it's just a cool position to be in.
I love it. Yeah. Speaking of one of the most famous Iroquois goalies, Oren Lyons, do you know him? Do you speak with him? Like, what has he taught you any lessons about the sport of lacrosse, about life?
When I met him, I've only met him a handful of times at the Iroquois national events, whether that be trials, practices, games, and we gab a little bit, but just kind of um, learning more about his story, not necessarily going up to him and asking him these questions, like obviously just kind of hearing stories about him, whether that be reading or word of mouth, but just the cool guy that he is. Again, much like Marty, like him coming up to me, he didn't have to. Like we're getting ready to play Canada, and he comes up to me and tells me, "You got this." Just a couple words, pat on the back, and keeps it moving. Like that at the time meant the world, right? Coming from a guy like Oren Lyons, and again, he doesn't have to say much. Like we all know who he is to get his point across, and so just to get a little acknowledgement like that goes a long way. And again, being probably a goalie and then being in sports, he understood the position we were in and probably what we were all going through, and he knew like probably less is more in that situation. So just different things like that.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. Oh man, I had somebody on the podcast and they said like the reason they wanted to be a goalie is because some pro goalie walked by before a game and said, "Hey, keep it up. Like you're looking good. You're doing really well in there." And like the pro goalie probably wouldn't even remember that comment. Just a little simple compliment, but it meant the world to this guy, to this goalie, and like he used that. So it's interesting to note that if you're in that situation, sometimes just a simple little comment can make a kid's world.
Exactly, and that even comes back to being coming back to that leadership quality, right? Like you don't know whose life you can be impacting, just even outside of sport, in the sport, just being your best self every day can, like you said, you're a pro lacrosse player and you just happen to pass a kid on the street and say, "Hey, I like your shirt," and he knows who you are. You might not know who he is, or keep it up, or if he asks you to sign something like that, could spark something. And I think again, coming back to our sport and how small our community is of lacrosse, that
Mm-hmm.
just to have impacts like that is awesome. And I know I was in all of different pro goalies, pro lacrosse players that I seen. They were superheroes to me growing up, and so any kind of compliment or interaction you got from them went a long way for sure.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, cool. I'm hoping to get Oren on the podcast one day. That's kind of my stretch goal. We'll see if I can make that happen.
You're a great white buffalo, eh?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, so I'll tell you a little story. At the beginning of the year, I made a list of 5 like goalies that I wanted to have on the podcast. And I've gotten 2 out of the 5. So I have a couple white whales out there, but I hope we can make it happen.
Nice.
Yeah. Talking about the mental game, going back to the mental game you mentioned some lessons of, having fun, um, that next shot mentality. Anything else come to mind for you about, about being mentally tough, or how you might go about teaching a young goalie to be mentally tough?
Um, I think as we got older, sorry, I'm just moving rooms here.
No worries.
I I think learning to have fun with the game. So again, just being uh younger, I put the game on a pedestal, and again, any goalie, any player in the sport, in athletics in general, you're gonna learn more as you get older. So the mental side of things, I went from having fun, right? You're a little kid, you're just happy to be out there, happy to go to practice, to the game does get a little bit more in your career. The further up you go, it gets a little bit more intense, a little bit more serious. And that's where you got to learn to balance both the having fun and being in the moment and understanding the um like the intensity of the game. So when growing up, my issue was like later in high school, early college, was trying to control too much, and also hanging my hanging my head more on the uh, a couple of the negative things opposed to all the positives. So um, it's kind of like that saying, like 100 like compliments and one negative comment or whatever will ruin your day.
Hmm.
So learning how to balance that and appreciating all the positives, and also coming back to just having fun, being older, being in the NLL, the National Lacrosse League. I've learned to, with the help of some people, just to have back fun again. Like obviously we're playing against the best competition in the world, but at the root of this game is just that it's fun to have fun, right? So going into it, I've learned, and we were talking about too about giving up goals. So I remember, especially in field lacrosse, trying to get myself so jacked up listening to I don't know, say System of a Down or some kind of techno music before games, and getting my energy so up there. But the thing is with that, if the game doesn't start the way you want it to right off the kick, that high that you're on is going to be a major low. And so unfortunately, I'd find myself in situations like that where maybe I give up a goal pretty early that I didn't want to, or the first shot of the game goes in. Like that sucks enough, but to be on such a high and pumped up going into the game, that can bring you right down. And then if you don't get over that too quickly, you're gonna find yourself digging yourself out of a hole. So I've learned to, honestly, my approach now is um, I don't really think about the game until it's almost time. So when I mean that is, obviously I think about it, I know who we're playing in the scouting report, but when I go into a locker room, there's music on, but what works for me is I'm not listening to music. I'm just hanging out with the teammates, maybe cracking a few jokes, talking about the week, and then we go into warm ups. Again, there's music playing, and we're getting warmed up. Not that I'm going through the motions by any means, but taking it easy a little bit more. And then as that last 5 minutes before we go out there, that's when I like to turn on the switch. So I'm not wasting all of my energy on the warm up or being too hyped for so long. That adrenaline, right? It's gonna wear off at some point. And two, just kind of gradually get into that high, that hyper focus, that high energy, rather than being at that heightened state the whole time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's interesting. It just goes to show you there's so many ways to like play, lacrosse goalie. Not only how you make saves and your stance, and how you hold your hands, and the arc and your positioning, but even just like the pregame. It's there's a lot of different styles, and that was not my style, by the way. Like I really, and I think I fed off, listening to that punk rock music and kind of getting really pumped up for
Yeah,
the game. So that was me. But you
and
know what? Like I said, it's not for everybody.
yeah, and that's the beauty about our position, right? And again, like what you said, like I was the same way, and then going back to like even the warm-ups again, like Nick Gatto, he was my warm-up man at OCC, and he would fire me shots for half hour straight before our actual warm-up even started as a team. And getting older now, learning like I can't do that because I'm just gonna burn myself out before the game. So even being in that, again, coming back to that heightened state of being so fired up, I can't keep that. I know my body and I know myself as a person. I can't keep that up for 3 hours. I can keep it up for two, but not for three. So again, whatever works for you or anybody, I think that's what's cool about our position.
Yeah. It also speaks to knowing yourself, which is a very powerful quality, right? Like, some goalies, I've talked to some goalies and they're like, yeah, before a game, I need 200 shots. I need to see 300 shots, right? That's just me. I know myself, right? And it's a very powerful, I think it's a very powerful thing if you can get to that point, because like we're talking about, all goalies are different, and knowing what puts you in the best mood and what gets you mentally prepared and what gets you physically prepared for a game is very important.
Yeah, exactly. And then like it's funny you say that too. Like again, like there's goalies that like ton of shots, and I've heard of goalies that prefer not to have any shots. They'd rather just go in. Maybe they take like 10 shots like just to get their stick going, but that's it. So obviously everybody's different and everybody has their way of playing the sport.
I love it. I love it. Well, this has been a ton of fun, Warren. You feel like we missed anything? Any other great stories you need to tell me?
Um I'm just trying to think. Nothing, no, nothing too crazy. Just
All right.
trying to be grinding and stuff like that. It's been a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, I know before we hit record, you told me you guys are still on lockdown there. I hope everything opens up and you get back to playing some pro lacrosse and continuing to work. So thank you so much for taking the time to share your knowledge of the game and some of the history and the culture of how you grew up. It's awesome stuff. I love hearing it, love learning about it. If you had to leave the goalies out there with one final piece of advice, what would that be?
Just again, like I don't think I can emphasize this enough, but just have fun, man. Like this game, don't take it too seriously. Like you're gonna have a way better time having fun with it. So, and that enjoying your teammates, things like that. So it goes a long way.
Love it. If people wanted to reach out to you, are you on the social medias?
Yep, I believe I'm at W Hill 76 on both Instagram and Twitter. That's my main thing of how you can get a hold of me. I don't post much, but I'm always on it. So yeah.
Love it. If goalies shoot you questions, do you got time to answer them or no?
Oh yeah, I always got time for goalie talk. Love it.
Yeah, that's what I like to hear. Warren, thank you so much.
All right, no problem, man. Have a good one.